individuals and other individuals. I am Don of Caricatures by Don. It's kind of been a while since I brought you one of my sketch process videos, so I thought that I would do another one. This one is going to be different from the others that I've posted before in two ways. One, I'm going to draw digitally this time, where in the previous ones I've drawn in my red pencil. I'm going to draw on my iPad in Procreate, and I'm going to do more of a graphic sort of black outline with color fills style, rather than the fully shaded pencil sketches that I've done before. The second way that this one's going to be different from the other sketch videos I've done is that my choices of subjects before have been taken from my list of follower requests back when I had my follower request month in March, and some of the names that were requested were less than A-list celebrities, and I wanted to do somebody who would be more immediately recognizable for this one, and so I'm going to be drawing the lovely and talented Anne Hathaway. Hope that you enjoy it. Alright, so I have Procreate open here on my iPad, and the first thing I need is my reference photos. As always, I like to have my reference photos in front of me while working, and in Procreate you can do that by tapping this little wrench icon up here in the top corner, and underneath the Canvas tab you go to Reference, turn that on, and it'll bring up your reference photo window here. I'm going to tap Image at the bottom, and that allows you to go into your photo library and choose whatever photo you want to work from by hitting Import here. Now, one of the problems that I have when I'm working in Procreate is that, as I've said before, I like to have multiple photos to work from. Procreate will only let you open one at a time, so what I like to do is assemble all of my reference photos into one image. And that way we can move that window up here to the top corner and move around within that window from one photo to another as needed. I think I'm going to start with this one that's got the angle that I want to try to draw Anne Hathaway at. Now, the first thing that I observe when looking at Anne Hathaway's face is large eyes. Quite famously, I think she has large eyes and full lips. So I'm going to make sure that I emphasize those. We'll start with just a very quick idea of the shape of her face here, I think. But I'm not going to commit to that yet, because as I draw in the features, I may change my mind about the exact shape I want to represent there. But this gives me an idea of where to place the eyes. She has eyes that are not only large, but kind of droopy. They can slant down toward the outer corners here. I'm going to try to do that while also keeping them even with each other. A lot of times when I'm drawing eyes with an exaggerated downward droop to them, or with an exaggerated upward point to the ends, the challenge that gives me is that I have a hard time placing the pupils in a way that makes them look like they're looking in the same direction relative to the slope of the top of the eye. Will look like they're pointing in two different directions if if I put them both in the exact same place. So I've got to try to figure out where I can put them in order to keep them from looking all wonky. That may not be quite right still. That's definitely wonky. I'm going to come back to that later. She also has quite a notable nose, but not because it's large. What's interesting I've found about Anne Hathaway's nose isn't the size of it, it's the fact that up here at the bridge, normally a nose would kind of narrow out like this. It would go thin at the top, where hers is almost as wide at the top as it is down here at the bottom. So I've got to make sure that I pay attention to that in order to get the likeness right here. And keep the nose the same width all the way down. And go back to my original photo here to get the shape of her nose. There's kind of a slope to it. And I think her nostrils have kind of a downward slant to them. I'm going to move this eye a little closer to the nose here. One of the great advantages of sketching digitally over pencil on paper is that you can do things like that rather than going back and erasing and trying to redraw. You can just kind of move parts around as needed. Now to get those full lips, one thing I have fun doing with full-lipped people is getting the lips right up along the sides of the nose. It doesn't always work, and I'm prepared to change it if I find that it doesn't work for her face. And I am going to change, like I said, the shape of the face somewhat now that I have the features more sketched in, to give her a bit more of a chin than I had. Her eyebrows, again, distinctive, but not actually large. She doesn't have big, thick eyebrows. I think what makes them stand out is just that they're so dark. So I'm going to be careful not to over-accentuate them as far as the size of them goes. I'm observing as well that her head narrows toward the top here. Large ears as well. I'm going to emphasize those. Now, I can see that I'm not getting the likeness quite just yet. So, now that I have the basic features sketched out, now I have to go start trying to remodel them to figure out what it is that I'm getting wrong. And I think one thing is that, like I said, this might not be right for her face, having the mouth so high up. I feel like we can heighten the likeness by making sure we get that little space between her mouth and nose. It's not a large space, but somehow not having any space there seems to be affecting the likeness. Just select the mouth and shift it down a little bit. Now I'm also realizing that I don't quite have the shape of her lips right. With this wave shape that I have here, it's actually more almost flat across the top, apart from the little divot in the middle. So I'm going to draw it more like this, I think. And then add that dip right below her nose. Now this is interesting too, actually. Now that I'm looking closely, I can see that this corner of her top lip remains thick right up until about this point, and then suddenly goes thin and tucks underneath the corner of her mouth. That's interesting. And then the bottom lip, you can actually see, you don't even see much of a lip right here at this corner. The lip kind of starts right here, so I'm going to exaggerate that a little as well and see if that helps me nail down her likeness a little better. I think I'm going to alter the shape of her eyes a bit here. May have moved her mouth down just a bit too much. I'm going to bring it back up just a touch. I think I may have mentioned in one of my earlier videos that I do have a tendency to start too large. When I'm working digitally, it's great that I can just resize in order to make room for her kind of long, thin neck. I'm actually, I keep coming back to these eyes. I feel like I'm not quite getting her eyes right, and that's a very important part of her likeness. I think I'm not making them droop down quite enough, maybe. I am still level with you, not happy with this likeness. I'm having a hard time figuring out why, so I'm just going to keep playing with it for a bit. I think I have a likeness I'm happy with here. Now, another thing I like to do is reduce the opacity of this level. I'm going to make it like just very light. And then add another layer above that and try to sketch this again, but with the exaggerations pushed a little further. If it turns out that I don't like what I end up with, then I will just come back to this initial sketch. But if I can get the exaggerations more pushed and still maintain the likeness, then even better. So now I'm going to hide that first layer and see what I've got on the second layer more clearly and see whether I have indeed improved the exaggerations without losing the likeness. And I think I just might have done that. Sometimes I even find when I do this that somehow in the act of heightening the exaggerations, I've even improved the likeness. Whether that is the case with this one, I will let you be the judge. But I do think that I still have a good likeness here. And since I have also heightened the exaggerations, I'm going to call that a better caricature. And now, before cleaning, I'm going to do one more thing. Up here in the canvas menu, I'm going to hit flip horizontal and look at it backwards. This is a good way to spot structural problems that you didn't notice looking at it the first way. And I can see here that I do have a couple that I have this slanting up way too much. Her whole face kind of tapers in toward the now left-hand side of the screen. I have an upward slant to it all that I didn't notice before. So I'm going to try to correct that. Actually, the way I'm going to do that is to select the mouth again, And this time I'm going to rotate it a little. My video cut out there for a bit, but as you can see, I've now flipped the drawing back to the orientation I originally had it. What I'm going to do now is, again, reduce the opacity of that layer so it's just light. And I'm going to add another layer on top of that. And now I'm going to start my inking, for which I go back to the paintbrush menu, and instead of sketching, I now select inking. And the one that I like to use is called Syrup, but there are a lot of options you can choose from here. I also have the pressure and smoothing settings set fairly high, around 45 or so % under the stabilization tab here. And that's gonna keep my lines from being too jittery with my not having a perfectly steady hand. So now I'm gonna start tracing over my sketch while at the same time paying attention to things that I observe that maybe I didn't notice when doing the initial sketch. Before I start adding the color, I am going to duplicate this layer. I know there's got to be a more straightforward way to do this in Procreate, but frustratingly, the only way I've found to do it so far is to select the whole layer and then tap copy and paste down here. And that, if you go up to your layers now, you can see you have that same line work on two separate layers. I'm going to go to the bottom of those two layers, and that's where I'm going to start filling in the shapes. Now the next thing that I usually do is create another layer underneath this one, so that all these little shapes that are going to take too long for me to drag the color into, I can just color in on that lower layer without coloring over what I have already done. And now one more thing I like to do to give her a little more life is add another layer above the color layer. I'll pick a nice pink hue here. And I'm going to go to airbrushing. I'm going to use soft edged airbrush on a somewhat lower opacity to just add a bit of pinkness to her cheeks, her nose, and her ear. I do this with most people I draw this way. It's just a nice way to give them a little more life. And I'm going to make that layer a clipping mask, which means that it won't extend outside of what I have drawn on the layer below it. It does, however, still paint over onto the hair, so I'm going to go in with the eraser and take that part out. Anywhere I don't want that pinkness to be, like in the hair or on the eyes, I'm going to have to go now and erase. And I think I'm also going to give a little highlight to her lips, not with the airbrush tool, but rather back to the inking tool. I'm going to do that on the original color layer. And I might do a few little highlights on her jewelry as well. So there you have it. There's my final sketch of Anne Hathaway. I hope that you enjoy it. Hope that you've enjoyed watching this video and maybe picked up a few little tips. I don't claim to be a Procreate guru by any means. I'm still learning how to use it. I'm just trying to show you how to use the tools that I have learned to do caricatures in my style. If you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the comments. If you have any suggestions for other celebrities that you'd like to see me draw, you can drop those down there too. Don't forget to like this video, please, and subscribe if you'd like to see more, and share it with people that you think might be interested. I'd really appreciate that. I'm trying to grow this channel so that I can continue making these videos. Thanks for watching. I'm Don. This is Caricatures by Don, and I still haven't thought of a good catchphrase to sign off my videos with yet. See you on the next one.